Hello everyone, my name is the RetroDen, and today I'm here to talk about a very controversial game that the older ones out of you might know as Final Fantasy XIII Versus, and the other ones who probably have already played this game know it as Final Fantasy XV, which released way back on the PS4 and that has been sitting on my backlog for the PS4 as well for a long time, and I decided that this October 2024 was when I finally was going to clear it out of my backlog, and I have to say that nothing has left me this mad ever since they invented those pants with the waists or the bands on the ankles. Now, Final Fantasy XV is quite a controversial game for a lot of reasons, not only because it's set in development hell for like over 10 years and it completely changed from what it was going to be, and it differed from what they showed in the trailers when it was originally concepted, but because it released two controversial opinions as well. So, releasing this game had quite a few problems. As you know, it's set in development hell, which probably led to the story being the confusion it ended up being when it released as Final Fantasy XV. The complaints I heard about Final Fantasy XV before playing it was that the story felt incomplete and that Square Enix decided that to fill in the gaps they clearly had in the main story, they used the DLC with episode Ignis, Prompto, Gladio, and Arden that were supposed to fill in the gaps of things we didn't know throughout the story. Now, I say that this game left me mad, and I have to explain why, and this is the whole point of this video. I want to lay out my thoughts on why I think this game was a reason to make me mad. And I have to say beforehand that despite this game making me mad, I quite liked it. I love Final Fantasy and I think this was a very unique take on the franchise, if anything. But the story for me was the point that left me mad, because it managed to leave me feeling two specific things. The first was that they had a really good idea they could have elaborated better on, and the second one is that the ending was very touching compared to some other moments of the story in which I felt almost nothing. So spoiler alert if you haven't played this almost 10-year game, Noctis dies at the end, and I know why he did so if you don't know anything about Final Fantasy XV lore, basically there's this immortal guy which belongs to the family of Noctis, and he basically has to go into the Nether realm and to kill him while he's basically semi-dead, so he needs to kill him in the afterlife so he dies, and in the process he dies as well. But why is that important, and why does a specific ending of a game leave me so mad? Because it basically means that the entire journey of the game is pointless, because if you know anything about Final Fantasy XV, all this I just explained doesn't just develop throughout like 50 to 60 to 70 hours of gameplay of slowly building up that Noctis is going to have to die. So basically you go through an open world trying to meet what is going to supposedly be your wife to succeed the throne to your father, playing as Noctis, and the story basically divides itself in three parts. So first you leave out to the world to go meet your wife, then you get into a hurdle of you are trying to be killed, and already in the second chapter your father in the game, King Regis, is dead, and then right after that your wife is dead, right after that you discover you have to die, and then you die. And all of this, if you disregard side content, happens over the span of like 40 hours, which is really small for the scope they were trying to put out here. And given that they had 10 years of development hell, you would expect that they would be out with a more consolidated story than what we got. But I was very mad because I thought this story had a lot of potential, and I really felt that ending. I think it was a really good ending, but it needed to be like after 50 or 40 more hours of gameplay on top of we already had. And the other thing that also left me very mad was that the Final Fantasy tropes weren't very well implemented in this game, because we got some of the common enemies thrown around, but the overall setting of the world didn't really feel Final Fantasy, besides all the common things you have in every Final Fantasy game, like chocobos, but the summons were really poorly implemented. You only got to use them whenever, for whatever criteria, the L2 prompt popped up on screen and you had to use the summons. And the other aspect that I think really nailed and was only one of the only ways in which this game was a clear Final Fantasy was in the Final Fantasy XIV event quest, where it had a Garuda fight that was straight ripped off out of the Final Fantasy XV game, similar to the events they have in other Final Fantasy games, reminiscing of older Final Fantasy games. And I don't know how I feel after playing this game after so many years. I got really invested in the world. I think it's a really, really, really cool world. They definitely had the ideas, and I would definitely love to see these remade or remastered in, like, let's say even if it takes 20 years, like it took like some of the older Final Fantasy who are just now getting remastered, like Final Fantasy VII. I think in a few years, a few decades, people will be very nostalgic over this game, and they could probably release it, not remake it, but re-remaster it with everything pushed in the right order, so it makes out to be something of a more complete product. And overall, I think this was a very nice game, a pleasant platinum experience that didn't make me go out of my way to collect boring stuff. The dungeons were interesting, albeit not very good compared to other Final Fantasies as well. And if anything, I think this game and the scope it was trying to set laid out a pretty good foundation for what Final Fantasy XVI ended up being, which supposedly is a very great game, which I still have to play. And I really wanted to make this video to talk a bit about Final Fantasy XV, and if you have played this game, I'd love to discuss it with you in the comments or in my Discord. It's always in the description if you want to join. But I'd love to hear what you think about this game. And I have more backlog to clear, so I can give you guys an update in October. Therefore, this has been the Retro Den. I'm out.